I'm in Lehigh today with Randy Blackburn, who is an artist and a gardener extraordinaire, and we're here visiting his gardens and learning about kind of what his thinking is when he's putting together his gardens. And Randy also helps other people landscape, so he's an expert at this. And Randy, first of all, tell us, how much space do you have here?
I have just under an acre. I started with a little over a third of an acre and filled that up quickly, and then bought the field in the back. And it starts here and it goes back, and it's 25 years old back there.
How long have you been gardening?
Since I was a little kid. So my great grandmother had a beautiful rose garden, and she raised dahlias and cannas, so many beautiful things. And they tell me that when I was a little boy, I was the only grandchild allowed in the garden, and I would go up and I'd get my nose right close, but I would never touch them. That's what the story is. So I've always loved it. I spent my allowance on plants at my home as a kid. I had my room full of African violets. I could have so many per window, my mother had limitations, and I've always just done it. I love it.
What do you love about gardening? Why do you love it?
Well, I like to create things. And so with a garden, I can take a little spot and create something, a pot or a big area. And that's my favorite thing to do, is just create stuff all the time. It's built into me. I can't stop it. So gardening is just a good outlet for that.
When you are creating, what do you think about when you're coming up with a space that you're landscaping, or even in your artwork? What do you think about?
Well, first and foremost, I think of what plant will grow there, because that's the biggest mistake people make, is they'll go buy potted hydrangeas and put them in the sun. You have to know your plants and know what they like. So I look at the area and decide what I want it to say, and then work from there. And I like to work with textures and color, sometimes fragrance.
How do you want people to feel when they come into your garden? Because you share your garden quite a bit.
Surprised, like they're somewhere that they have never been before. And usually the garden changes enough that even the drama kids that come often, it's different for them every time. And it's different every time during the day. Like the whole garden's lit at night with hanging lights through the trees, and there's solar lanterns. And my friend was here last night and he said, I love your garden in the daytime, but nighttime I really love your garden, because it's just barely lit. You can see everything, but not really bright.
Describe some of the surprises that you've added in to just really add that little magical element.
Well, like the pond and the koi, you come right into the back of the garden, and that's the first thing that you see. You hear the water. Another thing I like to do is, sometimes you probably noticed as you go through the garden, you had to move things. And you had to step around stuff. I know you mentioned, I hope I don't step on anything. Well, I don't care. Sometimes I'll hang something that I want people to see right in the way, because so many people miss everything. They just go through oh, that's nice. Come on, honey, let's go home. And so, like this, I could have had that so that it is out of your way, but it's so much easier to see it if you have to duck around it. And also, it's hiding the next room that you go back into, which is more of an open area with a lot of pinks.
Right, really makes me want to just keep walking all the way through your garden.
Yeah.
How does your artistry or your talent as an artist add to what you do in the garden?
Because I do art all the time, so I would consider myself an artist. I made a living doing it. But when I plant things, I can always see it completed before I start. That's the same with a painting, a set, a housing project. No matter what, I know what it's going to look like when I'm done, and so then I just set about finding the things that I need to make that happen.
Gosh, I wish I had that talent. Talk about the paintings that you are displaying right now in the garden.
I hung paintings out today of things that I did during COVID because I have bad lungs, and I just didn't leave. Like, my kids brought my groceries and stuff, and so the paintings that are hung today are all done during that year that I just sat in the garden and painted, and it was magical to be here by myself. Well, my wife and I wasn't bored. I wish, I'm a real people person. I wished I could have interacted with the kids at school, and I couldn't. But I found out a lot about myself. I can entertain myself. I can still create with whatever I want. And then I did these paintings, and that's kind of what's in the garden today.
Talk for a minute about how even your jewelry that you make is kind of incorporated into your garden with the rocks that you've chosen around your patio area.
Yeah. So behind the pond is a huge pile of rocks, and I have a saw and all of the equipment to turn them into to the cabochons and stones. And then I learned how to, a couple years ago, my kids gave me the stuff to learn silver, and I set things in sterling silver. And so I'll ask this is Morenci turquoise. It has silver in the turquoise too. But I'll ask the drama kids what color they like or what they like, and I like to make things for people. I like to share stuff.
So you like to put the stones out so people can see them?
Yeah, they can choose. Oh, I like this green one. What would it look like? And then I cut it and polish it for them, put it in jewelry.
Tell us about the fairies that you made in your garden.
There were these wire fairies on Facebook one time, and my favorite one was this fairy blowing dandelions. Like, I'm not talented enough to do it, or I haven't taken the time to do it yet. But I contacted the man. He was in England, and he said, I cannot help. I have enough orders with just that being on for a week. And so I found some bonsai wire that I had and started sculpting it, and I sculpted little fairies, and then I found strings of like gazing balls, only they're smaller. And so I hung the fairies there, and I put them in areas in the garden that I think that the fairies live.
Some things I noticed walking through is the environment is very important to you. Nature is very important to you. Talk about kind of some of the things you've thought about that attract pollinators and butterflies.
Well,
birds.
first you have to know what they like, and be specific. Like, I don't like to put out the bird seed that grows all the seed, and they have to shell it and everything. But I love the goldfinch, the juncos, the little songbirds, and they eat out of those mesh things that you have to dodge through the garden, and they just land on it, and then they pick the thistle seed out of it. Just be specific and know what the bird that you like wants to eat.
You're doing your part to save water. Explain,
I am.
describe that. What are you doing? I mean, you have this beautiful, lush, green, colorful garden, but
Right.
yet you can still do your part to conserve water.
Yes. I let the natural canopy fall in the fall, and I let the leaves lay there and decompose. A lot of people don't like disease, they don't like the insects in it, but I just let it do its thing. Well, what that does is it makes a nice compost. I can reach down in my soil, which was terrible soil when I moved here. Lehigh clay is terrible, but I can reach down at least to here. And in so doing, last year's leaves keep the soil cool and shaded and moist. And then I have trees over the top of that keeps the hot sun away. And so my soil doesn't dry out. It's very important that you plant the correct plant in the right spot. If a plant has a root system with a tuber on it, like a daylily, that holds water. An iris, that holds water. It's a built-in little reservoir to keep that plant alive. You don't have to water that plant every couple days. That's just full of water. Succulents are great because they'll see that shiny foliage that is dense. It doesn't evaporate out of it. And if you look for plants like that, a lot of times if the plants are hairy, like this one right here, that doesn't evaporate water out of it at a rapid rate compared to this plant. This thin little kiss me over the garden gate. It dries out. I'll come out in the garden after it's 100 and something degrees in the afternoon, and it doesn't look the best. The little plants like that are wilting, but it doesn't mean they're dying. And I see so many of my neighbors that if something's wilting, they just get the water out. Well, the cool evening will revive that plant and it'll look good the next day.
How much time do you spend out here each day?
I spend all day. It's very complicated to keep a garden looking like you never touch it. People come here and say, oh, I wish mine would grow like this. Well, you constantly are grooming.
Why do you do it?
Just to share. So someone else can get excited. Maybe go home and plant a pot.
At the very beginning of our conversation, you talked about it being about the memories.
Yes. The plants, there's a memory about every plant in the garden, or the people that inspired me because of that certain plant, or the friendships that I have, or that so-and-so shared this with me, or I shared that with somebody else. Everything's a memory with me.
You have really done a lot to incorporate all of our senses in your garden, and I want you to talk about that for a second, because it's not just the visual, but you've got the beautiful aromas of different things. So talk just about how you've incorporated all of our senses.
I think that if you heighten your senses, then you use them. And so in the garden, I try to have things that when you brush by them, it's going to smell good. I like the birds because you can hear them. That's why. It's so cute.
Good.
I love them. It's like having a cat.
Oh my gosh, they're beautiful. Kind of like your pets?
Oh, yes.
Are these your pets?
And I raised all these during COVID. I have bought an incubator and shipped eggs in from show breeders. He does not like me touching this girl. And then in the top there's about 50 parakeets, and they've all got babies in the nest. The parents are the red and yellow and blue ones over in the corner. And it weighs about 15 cents.
Is there a favorite spot? What would you describe as your favorite spot in your
pond.
garden?
Yeah, the pond. If I do sit down, I sit and feed the fish. So.
What is it about the pond?
I just love the fish. They say in art, you either are a minimalist, you just do a little bit, or you go way over the top, but you never do in between because people think you don't know what you're doing. So I have lots of stuff. I'm over the edge.
I love that. That really helps me describe your garden. So what have I not asked you that's important to you that you think people should know about you and the garden?
Well, that they're welcome anytime. Last year was so hard. But anybody's welcome anytime. I have neighbors that I've met that, I don't know them, other than they'll walk 4 or 5 blocks and walk through the garden at night. you know. And my wife will say, "Who's that?" I said, "I don't know their name." But they work at the junior high, they teach math. you know, I just love people to come and enjoy the garden.
Right. So you get emotional because you weren't able to share your garden.
I couldn't, and it was hard.
To me, gardening is not for everyone. I mean, it's just really a labor of love.
It is. I think everybody would love to garden if they chose what they liked, and like some people don't want to maintain things. Well, that's fine. You can still garden and have it easily maintained. You know, you don't have to spend all day every day, like I do. Even a pot, even a pot by your doorway, I think can bring you a lot of joy.
And that, I think, is the bottom line. The joy that we get just from being out and enjoying just the beautiful, like what you've created here. I mean, just walking through and different smells and sounds and the rooster in the background just adds so much to our lives.
Yeah, thank you.